It's so nice to start the day with yoga. Let yourself settle in. Feel into the room around you. Perhaps there are voices in the house. Animal friends. Trees outside that you know well. Neighbors. Feel into these surroundings. And notice your comfort level with them. Do these connections support and nourish you or not? It takes listening inward to know this. The skill of deep listening. In our workshop this last weekend, we discussed 3 components of this deep listening. The first being curiosity. Can we take this kind of U-turn gaze back into ourselves? And with curiosity, explore our emotions, our reactions, and even when the unexpected happens, can we stay focused? Curious about our reactions. Can we open our senses, turning our senses inward, the practice of pratyahara, noticing the whole of the inner landscape. When we do have reactions to our surroundings, where do they land? Where do they inhabit? Where do they arise from in our bodies? The gut, the heart, mind. And where do we store the reactions in the tissue? Is it in the shoulders or the psoas? A gripping of the pelvic floor, a clenching of the jaw. And what does it feel like when we store emotions? What does it feel like when we store anger or sadness? What does it feel like when we store delight or joy? Curiosity and open senses. The third element of deep listening is presence. To be fully present in the moment, really willing to hear what is there, even if we're hearing with our sense of touch or feel. Even if we're hearing with our eyes the body language of another person. This is deep listening. I invite you in this practice today to lean in softly with a willingness to be changed by what you hear. This is a quote from Mark Nepo. Listening is leaning in softly with a willingness to be changed by what you hear. And I invite you to lean into yourself. And I invite you today to listen to the voices that arise throughout the practice. Are the voices inside of you supportive, kind, and compassionate? Or are they troubled, tired, grumpy, critical, judgmental? There may be many different voices. I invite you with curiosity to make space for them all and to see if your witnessing presence can hold them in compassion and loving kindness. Ah, yes, I see you and I hear you. And you have the right to not want to give some voices as much airtime. You can tell them that too. That doesn't mean they'll stop speaking. But we become conscious of them there. Perhaps we can have a conversation with them then. Can we, with loving kindness and compassion, hold their presence in awareness? Because each different voice may be trying to protect us and help us in some way, even if it doesn't feel like it. With curiosity, can we notice? Attempt understanding. Deep listening. Let's now, for a moment, listen inward to the breath, inviting the breath deep into the body. We know anatomically that gas exchange happens best in the lowest lobes of the lungs. So we invite the breath deep to nourish us as we explore. We invite a three-dimensional breath that opens the whole circle of the lowest ribs. And we find those places where we may harbor old hurt, tension, and emotions that we may not need to harbor anymore. And we invite them to release on the exhale from shoulders, from psoas, from jaw. With curiosity, we see if the release occurs and continue the invitation to relax, to open into this present moment, ready to be here now, not anchored in some past. Here now, conscious. And loving and kind if we're not yet ready to let go of the tension we may perceive as holding us together. Holding it all in loving kindness. Can we also look for the joy inside in sensations? Perhaps it bubbles up as memory and passes. Perhaps there's a joy in just being with the breath. In community from our homes. Relaxing into this yoga practice of unity. Of acknowledgement of the greater whole. Let's inhale our hands to our hearts. May we open our senses, turn them inward with curiosity, and really listen with deep presence today. Namaste. Okay, let's come to standing. And let's begin listening as we open our hearts in our practice. First, let's open the doorways of the joints in the hands by gently shaking, lightly bouncing at the knees. Feel the soles of your feet and see if you can relax them onto the floor. Let your arms shake out and back down and up and down again and around. Just feel into your own physical body. What do you sense as you move? And then pause with your hands skyward, still shaking. Feel into the body. And if you notice tenderness, can you acknowledge it with kindness and compassion? I see you. I feel you. I hope to make you feel better. And then stretch your hands open, and then make fists and stretch your hands open. And then let's reach with the left hand away from the left foot and release. And inhale, reach with the right hand away from the right foot and release, and back and forth across the body. Stretching the whole myofascial web so there's more space. And then rooting the feet, stretch both arms up, look up, reach up, even yawn if you want to. And then release the arms and circle the left arm, shoulder, circle the right, and just back and forth with your senses turned inward to notice what your body is saying to you. Then letting the elbows circle back and open, letting the hand reach and circle. Stopping anywhere along this trajectory that feels particularly good to you this morning. Noticing if there's a voice in you that says, I have to go to the last pose. I don't want to modify for my body. And if that voice is there, can you hold it in compassion? I hear you. I might override you for the care of my body, but I hear you. And I'm wondering what it is you want for us. And then inhale, reach the hands skyward, rooting the feet and interlace them, thumbs to the base of the skull. Rest your head back, wrapping the elbows forward, rooting the tail, lift the low back rib ring. Lift the heart and rest the head into your hands. Traction the back of the neck. Try to check in with your body that you're rooting the tail, activating your core so that you can be long in the lumbar and thoracic spine, long in the cervical spine of the neck. You can stay here holding the head or lengthen the arms, activating your front neck flexors. And then exhale back to mountain pose and release. And reach for your yoga strap. And take your yoga strap behind you. Hands facing forward, palms back, knuckles forward, palms back. And then inhale. Open across your collarbones first. Take the humerus bones back and broad. And then lift the hands back behind you. Lengthening through the arms, lift your low back rib ring. Lift and open the heart and lift your low back rib ring. Root your tailbone. This doesn't mean curl it under and flatten your lumbar spine. This means create the third leg of your stool, rooting your heels in your tailbone. Lifting your heart, lifting your low back rib ring means drawing energy in at the navel up along the front of the spine or activating your Uddiyana Bandha. And then bending your knees, begin to hinge forward, opening the arms back behind you. Some of you may pause here, that may be enough. Some may set your torso onto your femur bones and reach the hands skyward. Some of you may pause here. Some may be warmed up enough to lift the sit bones skyward and take the arms overhead. Stop anywhere along the trajectory that's best for your body. Honoring your body, but also notice the voices that are speaking to you. Can you hear them? And can you invite other voices in? Exhaling the hands back to your back and unhinging. Take the strap around to the front. And inhale, lifting the yoga strap skyward. Broaden across the collarbones. Let the arms slide as open as they need to. Root your tailbone. Lift the low back rib ring. Lift the heart. And don't worry about going overhead yet to the back body. Just feel into stretching the Y you've created open. Rooting the feet, the legs, lengthening the spine, releasing the shoulders broad, lengthening out each arm. And then exhale, release back down. And again, inhale up. Lift the low back rib ring, ground the tailbone. Find that length in the back body. And then lift the heart. Check in with your senses, exploring the body. How could I fine-tune this towards opening and ease? How can I open without straining? And release. And this next time, if you know your shoulders are okay with it, inhale the arms up and take them overhead and down. If you know your shoulders aren't okay with it, then don't do it. Find the movement that helps you open your unique body. Inhaling, let the arms rise, and exhaling, let them lower either direction. Find the movement with the breath. And if you want to pause for a breath or two in a particular stretch, feel free to do that. If this strap work isn't working for you because of shoulder issues, remember you can always come to the wall and turn away from the wall to open that same chest tissue. Do what's best for you. Let's learn to take care of ourselves despite the voices that may ask us to do otherwise. Conscious of the whole community, let's let our wisest self respond in caring for the body. Fluid breath. Three-dimensional breath. And then release the strap. And let's open the arms, palms up, thumbs gently back, but draw the heads of the arm bones back before the wrists. Don't teeter-totter the head of the arm bone into the front of the rotator cuff. Pausing here, shoulders broad. Take your left ear to the left. Feel into the right side neck. Perhaps gently turn your gaze to the floor. Or turn your eyes to look up towards the sky. Feel into the stretch and modify accordingly in your body. And then coming back to center, take the right ear over. Now remember, with osteoporosis, you're lengthening up through the neck. You're not collapsing into the right side, bone on bone. Those of you who do not have osteoporosis, if you've had a neck injury or you feel like you're pinching anything, come out a little bit. Let the length be more important than the bend. You may turn your gaze towards the earth. Turn your gaze forward again and eyes towards the sky. And then release the arms. And roll one shoulder and roll the other shoulder and both shoulders. And rooting the feet, lift the hands skyward, interlace them the funny way. Thumbs to the base of the skull. And lift the elbows, lift the skull, lift the low rib ring as you root from the pelvis down. Activate your bandhas. It's a lift of the pelvic floor, a lengthening and strengthening along the front and side spines. Feel the lift at your low back ribs. We don't just want to bend at the thoracic lumbar junction. We're inviting the thoracic spine of the rib cage to open. Fluid breath. We're balancing our body because most of the day we're more often in forward folds. Heart lifted, stay strong in the spine if you'd like to unfurl your arms. Not required. If you've had a neck injury, you may want to keep your hands supporting your head. Reach through each finger and thumb, stretch the hands open, and then fist and stretch and fist and stretch and fist and stretch. And exhale, arms down by your sides, and pause in mountain pose, feeling into what just this work has done for the body. And if you sit at a desk during the day or you're outside gardening and folded forward, can you come up once in a while and just take a standing back bend, balancing the body for your better health? Okay, now I know some of you need warning to go to a wall, but let's do have a wall today. We might want it a couple different times for support for balance, but some of you may want it, you may be able to use furniture instead. But this one, I do want us to find the wall back against it. If you can't get to a wall, you could lie on the floor. We want to press the arms from elbow to humerus back into the wall as we root the feet and lengthen the spine. Breathe into the whole circumference of the torso. Breathe space between the vertebrae, but really feel the strength of pressing the whole humerus bone, this long arm bone from elbow to shoulder, back into the wall. Maintain your lumbar curve. Try not to hyperextend at the knees, rooting the feet, lengthening the spine. Strong and broad in the back body. Feel into the back with curiosity. What do you sense there? And then release. Now, lift up either a yoga ball or if you have, a yoga block, or if you have a Gurdy ball, you can use that. And place that against the wall between your shoulder blades. Feet beneath you. Open your arms wide. Rooting the tailbone. Find a lift in your heart. A lift in the low back ribs as you engage the front abdominal muscles up along the front of the spine. Broad across your collarbones. Breathe into both side bodies. And as you feel into your body, think of what you've been doing the last few days that may be contributing to sensations you find. I just had a pretty intense rolfing session yesterday, and I'm feeling a different opening in my body because of that. Fluid breath, expanding the rib cage, lifting the heart, lifting the base of the skull, resting a little bit into the opening, but still grounding the tailbone, inviting the front abdominals to support the front of the spine from over bending. And then exhale, release. Last one, let's turn towards the wall, hands at shoulder height, and take a standing cobra, isometrically drawing down with the hands. First root the tailbone and heels, then lift the low back ribs. Bandha's active so you don't overbend forward. Check in that you're not throwing your pelvis forward. Your pelvis and legs are in Tadasana. Lift the low back rib ring, lift the heart, lift the shoulder blades underneath the back, and breathe into the heart. If this is hard for your head and neck, you can bring your hands behind the head. In fact, let's all do that now. Bring the hands behind the head, traction the neck. Keep rooting the feet, aware of where the wall is, and open your arms. And then bring your hands to the wall above you, open in a Y, and attach your fingers like they could glue on, and draw down to lift the heart, lift the low back rib ring. You may need to activate your glutes to find that lift. Lift, lengthen along the front of the spine, lift the heart, and release. Notice if your neck muscles were working. And then let's come to lying down on the floor. Have your bolster or your 2 blankets nearby. Have a yoga block, although we may not actually need you will need the yoga block. And lie down. You may want a pillow for your head. Remember, if you want to practice good, healthy alignment while you're laying down, you want your hairline and your chin even. So if your chin's jutting skyward, bring the blanket in, which will passively lengthen the muscles of your neck. Broaden across your shoulder girdle. and float one leg up to tabletop and float it back down, landing light as a feather. Float the other leg up and float it down. And continue exhaling one leg up and slowly inhaling it down. And exhale the other leg up and inhale it down. As you continue, feel into the heads of your arm bones releasing towards the floor. Your shoulders broad. You may feel the weight shift in your pelvis. Open your senses with curiosity and avoid the need to move fast because you feel like this is your workout. It's actually more of a workout for your psoas if you slow it down. Float one leg into tabletop and pause. Activate your core and float the other leg up to join. If your lumbar is flat against the floor, bring your feet down and put a folded blanket under your sacrum. Toe dip one foot and exhale it up. Toe dip the other. Stay conscious of your shoulder girdle broad and your humerus bones relaxing back. Exhale the leg up and inhale the next leg down. Fluid breath. Make sure that you're not overarching your lumbar spine. Ground the low back ribs back without flattening your lumbar curve. Now bring your hands up to the femur bones, fingertips up, and press your palms into the fingers, into the femurs, not the fingers, and draw your femur bones, the big leg bones, towards your chest. Broad across your shoulders, press and pull. Keep your natural lumbar curve, so don't overarch it and don't flatten it. Activate your core around the natural lumbar spine. This is a very safe isometric for those of you with low back issues. It's a great way to strengthen the core. Remember, you can work at 10% of effort all the way up to 100. But if you come to 100, remember you may not be able to sustain that. And you may begin bulging your belly or moving your spine. So find the place where you feel like, oh, I can honor the length of my spine and still work my core. And then hug the knees towards your chest, circle them wide and back together again. And notice if there's joy in the movement or there's frustration. Hear the emotions and acknowledge them. I hear you. Take the knees the other direction. If we can practice these deep listening skills with ourselves, we'll be more able to be present with others. Now draw the right leg in, knee in, and lengthen the left leg out at a 45-degree angle. If you go too low, you're going to be working from the low back. So try to keep the foot a little higher. You can even point the foot towards the sky and switch and switch and switch and lengthen the leg without over tilting the pelvis as you pull the other knee in. Try to keep the pelvis in a reasonable alignment, not hitching the hip each time the knee comes towards the chest. This is going to take core awareness, lengthening of the side bodies. Now gently nod your nose towards your mouth and almost lift your head from the hairline. Feel your front neck flexors activate. Your head doesn't even come off the floor. We're strengthening the muscles of the front of the neck. They're starting to talk about these front neck flexors as part of your core system. It's pretty cool. Many of us are weak in these front neck flexors and really tight in the back of the neck. So we're trying to balance the body. Now draw both knees in. Reach your hands and feet for the sky. Zip your legs up and hold a tennis ball between your big toes. So your feet are in a little bit of a V. Hug your glutes in towards the bone, which is gently hugging your sit bones towards each other. Now slowly take your wrists away from your ankles, ankles away from your wrists, opening the V. And pause where you can sustain it with your natural lumbar curve. And then circle your arms, heels stay together, and hug the knees in. Heels stay together and you extend the legs out. Heels stay together and you hug the knees in. And we reach out to the V we can control. Feel into your core, a wrapping around the spine. And inhale, stretch out, and exhale and hug in. And one more. And then floating your legs up to your tabletop. Bring your hands one on top of the other behind the head. And exhale, lift your right elbow, lengthen the right knee, and switch. Please don't crisscross the body trying to touch the elbow to the knee. This causes us to use momentum to kind of flip across the body. Instead, reach the elbow up at the sky. You can twist it over to be closer to a line with the knee, the opposite knee, but still reach skyward like you're pushing a button with your elbow. That way you won't crunch the spine. Keep it long, rest the head back. Really work to lift the shoulder blade off the floor. Those of you with osteoporosis, you can keep the elbow in line with the knee on the same side as you lift. Then you don't risk compressing vertebrae. We reach and reach and reach and reach. And then come back to center and relax your head and your arms and float one foot to the floor and then the other. Pause here with your breath. Okay, we awakened the front abdominal core. In Pilates, what they call the powerhouse, from the inner thighs up to the low ribs. Now we want to strengthen the back. If you have a pillow, take it out. Bring your humerus bones beside your body, and like we did on the wall, broaden across your collarbones and lift the pelvis into a bridge. Right here, press back with the arm bones strongly and try to lift the center of the heart slightly. Make sure this doesn't impact the neck. Reach the tailbone towards the backs of the knees and take 3-dimensional breaths. Feel into the backs of your legs working. Gently hug your sit bones together and feel into your glutes activating. Feel the low back muscles, the muscles of the arms, the back of the arms and shoulder girdle working. Fluid breath into the body. Inviting it to circulate and nourish us. Listen inward to the sensations that are speaking to you, to the voices in your head. Can you hold it all with loving compassion? And then exhale, release the sacrum and nod tailbone towards earth and tailbone towards sky gently. So we strengthen the low back and then we release the lumbar a little bit in these pelvic nods. You can stay with the pelvic nods or you can switch to somatic walking, pressing into one foot, lifting the same side hip and then switching back and forth lightly, lifting one hip and then the other in just kind of a gentle rocking across the pelvis. It's not a twist, so your knees don't go flying side to side. Your knee actually reaches out over the same side foot. So it mimics walking a little bit. You're putting pressure on the foot, reaching the knee, lifting the hip. And this is a great release for the lumbar spine. Okay, now let's gently roll ourselves over and roll the front edge of the mat in for a little side bend work. Place your elbow under your shoulder and rooting into the humerus bone. You can either leave the pelvis on the floor and arch the arm over, or you can lift the pelvis up and arch the arm over and really lengthen out of the lifted arm. Breathe into the side ribs and invite the side spine to expand. Don't collapse the bottom side. Try to keep the bottom side long from armpit to hip as well. And feel into your neck. Can it arc in the same direction with the spine? And then really stretch the hand through the fingers and bring the arm back around. And let's switch sides. Grounding the humerus bone, elbow under shoulder. You can leave the pelvis on the floor or lift the pelvis, your choice. Really lengthening the side body. Breathe into it like you're air beneath a parachute. And lift and stretch that side body with your breath. Feel into the body with that curiosity, senses open. Inviting what you want. So for me, I invite the relax into the stretch. I invite the tissue to open. I invite the breath to massage the tissue. And release. Okay, let's come on to hands and knees. And inhale your cow and pause. Can you still find that lift underneath your spine? Lengthening from pubic bone to hyoid bone. Can you feel support underneath the spine? And then using that support, lift the spine into your hissing cat. Press hands away from knees isometrically on the mat. See if you can really find a lift in the low back. Where can you relax into the pose? So a lot of people really tighten their shoulders up around their ears. Can you relax them broad and lengthen the neck? And can you visualize breathing space between the vertebrae as you lift? And then one more time, core active like a sling beneath the spine. Open back up into your cow. Stretch sit bones away from shoulders, base of skull away from shoulders. Fluid breath. Core still working to support you. You may really feel a lift in the pelvic floor. And then maintaining that, use it to help you lift the spine into your hissing cat. Fluid breath. Inviting space between the back ribs, between the vertebrae. We need a spacious spine to do back bends. We need a supported spine. Inhale, forward lengthen from tailbone to base of skull. And then on your own, exhale the movement and inhale into your hissing cat. Follow your own breath, moving on the exhales and then taking a long inhale in the pose. And then open the knees wide, big toes together, and roll back for your child's pose. If this pose isn't accessible to you, feel free to come up into downward dog. You'll still be getting the spine lengthening without quite as much pressure on hips or knees. Those of you in the extended child's pose, spread your fingers evenly, press into your finger pads, lift the center of the palm. Keep that arch to protect your carpal tunnel and then roll toes under, lift into downward dog. Long spine. Imagine someone has a strap around the top of your femur bones and they're pulling you back, helping you lengthen the spine. Breathe space between the vertebrae. Traction your pelvis back, and then if it's comfortable, yes, take the femur bones back, but not if it cat curls your low back. Fluid breath. Notice if you've dropped your head like a heavy fruit between your arms. If you have, lift the head a little so that you feel a lift at the inner armpit. We don't want to collapse into the inner armpit. That causes rotator cuff injury. Long neck. Can you be present in this pose with curiosity? And then come back down to your knees and draw in your bolster. Okay, so you can use 2 blankets. You can even do this work from the floor if you like. You just need to be careful with your shoulders if you come up into chaturanga. Okay, but it's nice to start from the bolster or 2 blankets because that helps you really align yourself before you do the active core work. So the bolster wants to be supporting the lowest ribs, but your chest can hang out over the top. Forearms parallel to each other and forehead on your block. Long neck. Rolling your toes under if you can. Press into forearms and toes. Reach your tailbone for your heels and imagine those helium balloons lifting you from underneath the spine at the pelvis, the navel, and the low back ribs. You may even imagine a little one under your neck. Lift the neck so that it's supported too. The back of the neck long. Fluid breath into the strength you're creating in your body. Broadening the ribs away from each other on the inhales. And then exhale, release back to your prop and reach your arms open in a Y. Pressing into just the fingertips, lift the palms, lift the heart, and come into a baby cobra. Tailbone towards your heels. Release the shoulders away from your skull. And see, will your feet lift up off the floor? Can you lengthen out the legs? Pubic bone grounding. You're hollowing the abdominal muscles in to support the pelvis and lumbar spine. If this is comfortable, see if you can really reach the tailbone long, root the pubic bone. Keep length in the spine and float your fingers off the floor. So you can come back to these positions and do it again, or bring your hands beneath your shoulders. Make sure your shoulder blades are on your back if you're coming into chaturanga. Tailbone towards heels, press into your hands and lift from beneath the pelvis, beneath the low rib ring. You may or may not lift up your props. Lift into your chaturanga. Lift the hyoid bone in and up, keeping the neck long. Feel into the strength you're creating in your body. And then release onto your bolster, release your toes. Draw your hands back isometrically and roll up into your cobra. You can stay with baby cobra if that's better for your body. Lift the navel in, really lengthen the front of the spine all the way up to your hyoid bone. And then roll back down, really trying to find space between each vertebrae. So lengthen the spine as you roll down. And then inhale, roll back up, cobra. Shoulder blades on the back body, heart opening. And exhale, roll back down. And do this a few times at your own breath pace. Finding length by lengthening the tailbone towards the heels. Rolling back down, really try to lengthen the lumbar as you come down. This is stretching the psoas pathway. Really lift, maybe you really lengthen. And then exhale, roll back down. Bring your hands beside your hips, palms down, thumbs out. Broad across the shoulder girdle. Reach your tailbone for your heels and lift. Base of skull away from tailbone. Navel energy supporting the front low spine. Broad shoulder blades on the back. Feel into the strength you're developing in the back body. With curiosity, notice the sensations and see if you can notice pleasant and neutral sensations as well as unpleasant sensations. And then release back down. Wrap your hands around the block. And just rest, rolling across one eyebrow, through the center third eye, across the other eyebrow. Releasing any tension that you hold in your forehead. Letting it go. Since we've been doing this more frequently, I feel like I don't have as much tension in my eyebrows anymore. All right, let's roll back. Supported child's pose or child's pose, your choice. And let yourself rest. If child's pose doesn't work for you, remember you can roll yourself over and get some of the same benefits of the hip opener by hugging your bolster and wrapping your feet around each other like this. See how your knees are coming in, but they're not under pressure with the body. So it's like a supta child's pose. And then as you're ready, plant your hands, roll your toes under, lift up into your downward dog. Walk your dog, bending one knee and then the other, stretching the pelvis back. Think of your pets or your neighbor's pets, how they stretch when they wake up from a nap. Mimic them. Like a baby, try on new possibilities. And then walk your feet in towards your hands. Bend your knees. Rest the torso on the femur bones. Standing child's pose. And if it's accessible to you, begin to lift the sit bones into your Uttanasana. Don't go here if it brings you into this position where your tailbone's lower than the top of your sacrum. You're just risking herniating your discs. Make sure the hinge comes at the pelvis. Fluid breath. Lots of people do get injured in yoga, so we want to make sure we're taking care of the body in our postures. We can do that. Bend your knees, lengthening the spine. Unhinge and lift up into Utkatasana, hands at the heart. Knees bent. We're warming up the quads now as we exhale, twist gently one direction and inhale to center. Exhale, twist the other way. Inhale to center and follow your breath. Keep the knees really stable and centered. They don't twist too. Coming back to center, release your arms and swing and reach skyward into your standing back bend, tailbone rooting, long supported spine. Reach through each finger, through the thumb, ground the four corners of the feet. Lift your toes, lift your arches, lift your pelvic floor. And then exhale, mountain pose. Okay, let's bring the chair in and do a little work with Ustrasana, camel pose. So you may want your bolster, you may want a blanket for under your knees. I have 3 folded mats here, so I don't need a blanket, but you could put a blanket right there, not yet, but for the second pose. Come to sitting on your chair. If you have a folding chair, you can hold it with your hands. If not, you can use your fingers or your metacarpal arch right on top of the chair. You could bring blocks in to put your hands on. So find what will support you to sit at the front of the chair with your sit bones and lift your heart. Let your head rest back. Find that lift from the low back rib ring and tailbone earthward. And just let yourself pause in the lift. If any of you work in an office, you could take some time during the day, have a folded chair in your office so that you could actually counter the forward folding. Now release the seated back bend and take one leg under the chair, knee towards the floor. You can even let your sit bones come off the front of the chair. And just let the cushion of your buttocks kind of support you. And really lengthen the knee as you lift the heart broad across the shoulder girdles. Let the shoulder blades lift beneath you. Find your front core supporting the front of the spine so you don't overbend. And breathe up into the heart center. With curiosity, open to what your sensations have to tell you about this pose. And modify if you need to. I'm finding a little tension around my shoulders, so I just lowered my hands. And then bring the first leg back out and take the second leg under. Knee towards the floor, a lift at the heart, an opening. Yeah, so we're stretching the psoas pathway, inner thigh up to the spine. You're also stretching your quads open in the front of the leg. Fluid breath. Can you lengthen both side bodies up to the armpits? Can you lengthen both sides of the neck? Breathe into the heart center. Buoy the heart center with the shoulder blades. And then exhale. Come back to sitting on your chair. Fluid breath. See if you can float on your breath. So you can do that rendition again if it's hard for you to come onto your knees. If you can come onto your knees, unfold your blanket. I'll model. Unfold your blanket in front of the chair. And bring your hands in on top of the chair. Walk your pelvis right up to the chair. And press down into the seat as you lift and lengthen the spine. Okay. Press down. Now the tailbone roots. Try to find that front abdominal core really lengthening the front of the spine. So you are trying to release the psoas from inner thigh up to the lumbar. And then shoulder blades on the back. You lift the heart center, broad across the shoulder girdle. Really try to stay dynamic in the spine as you inhale up into the heart. Long neck, tailbone rooting, shins rooting. Feel the work of stretching yourself taller. And then exhale, release. You can sit back towards your heels, or you can bring a block in to sit on in Virasana for a moment. Fluid breath. Notice what heart opening does inside the body. And listen to any voices that come up and see, can you hold them as a witnessing presence with compassion? And then come up, and you can take that one again, or the seated on the chair one again, or bring your bolster onto your calves, and you can roll your toes under. If you don't have a bolster, you could put blocks beside your legs, that kind of traditional Iyengar way. I like this bolster because it's behind you, so you can press down into it. So first start with the hands on the chair. Find your length up both front, back, spines. Find your length up both side bodies into the armpits. And then begin lifting the heart. Remember the strength. You really want your Uddiyana Bandha turned on, your Mula Bandha turned on, and then bring your fingers to the bolster. Press down into the bolster to lengthen the back side body. Lift the heart so we don't collapse the back. We lift the low rib ring. We lift the back of the armpit. And we lift the heart and lengthen the neck. Now, if you feel like you can sustain this in your torso, really pressing into feet, then you can bring your hands behind the head, lift the elbows, traction the skull, and come into perhaps a little deeper back bend with head support. And then exhale and release, sitting back onto your bolster or your block. pausing on your chair with your breath. Whichever stage of the pose you chose to take is fine. And let's take the pose one more time. Come up. If you were on a bolster with your feet turned under, your toes turned under, this time you might try it with your toes, with the fronts of your feet flat on the floor. Now press down into the chair. Lift the heart, open the collarbones, lift the shoulder blades, really stretch the rib cage long. And then as you feel like you have your core strength, take your fingers to the bolster, press down again, lift the backs of the armpits, ground the pelvis, lift through the pelvic floor, lengthen up this beautiful spine that's reaching its heart skyward. Can you rest into your own strength in the pose? Really listening inward and honoring the body. And then exhale, release into your seat and pause with the breath. Ustrasana, camel pose. Bring your hands up to lay them over the heart center. When we stretch the heart center open, we can release emotions. So if that happens for you today, it's okay. Can you honor the work you've done to let emotions flow? Fluid breath. And now let's take one forward fold. Coming up, let's sit on the chair and bring our blocks forward for a wide-legged forward fold. So we just let ourselves turn inward after that, all that heart opening. Feet wide and grounded. Breathe length up the spine. And hinge forward at the pelvis, bringing your hands to your blocks. Some of you may feel like this is enough, keeping my knees open over the second metatarsals, my feet grounded. Some of you might think I can hinge a little farther at my hips, so I'm going to come lower. Some of you may be able to take your blocks forward into a wide-legged downward dog. Fluid breath into the stretch. Knees don't follow you forward. They stay open over the second metatarsals. You may want to sway your shoulders a little up and down, one side and then the other, to stretch the side bodies. Keep a gentle action at the front of the spine to support you. And then really breathe three-dimensionally into the torso. And then draw yourself back and come to sitting. Draw your legs in and pause, tuning into the breath, listening inward with all your senses to the body, to the mind, and to the heart. And now let's gently come down to the floor. I'm going to give you the option of continuing with heart openers if you like, or if you feel like, okay, I've done enough of that for the day, You can place your legs up on a piece of furniture, up on your chair if you like, and come into waterfall pose. I've been doing these heart opening poses all week. I think I'm going to try the waterfall pose. But if you'd like to come into a heart opener, feel free to come into Baddha Konasana with your bolster long and your blocks to either side of your knees, and let yourself rest back with a pillow under your head. And just let yourself rest in one more heart opener. Okay, your choice. Honor your body today. Bring in your blankets and your eye pillows, ready to make yourself comfortable. We haven't done an inversion in this practice, so if you choose the waterfall pose, that's also a healthy option for your body today to kind of balance the practice. And then make sure that you get yourself warm. So we moved slow today. So bring in your blankets. Settle in, nestle in. As we settle into Shavasana, remember Mark Nepo's words. Deep listening is leaning in softly with a willingness to be changed by what we hear. As you integrate the practice, can you lean in and listen? And as you deepen your breath today, invite that breath into the heart center. Breathe into the heart with tenderness. And then invite the breath into fingers and toes. Stretch in whatever way feels good to your body. Oh. Take your time, staying present with yourself. And then as you're ready, roll yourself up to a comfortable seat. And as you come into your comfortable seat, I'm going to share a card. My friend just gave me this wisdom deck of Buddhist teachings. I now open to the infinite grace and wisdom that resides deep within me. I take this time to acknowledge the spiritual masters and teachers who have come before me and brought me to this place. May the essence of these enlightened beings be invoked within me now. I give thanks for the teachings and the insights that have been passed down through the ages. May these insights calm my mind and open my heart. May I be awakened and be free, so that I may help all beings realize happiness and be free from suffering. Let's inhale our hands to our hearts. May this be so. Namaste. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your energy with the group today. And if any of you have any thoughts or anything you'd like to share, you're welcome.
Good morning, Tracy. This is Marlene.
Good morning.
I just wanted to check in to see